Welcome everyone to the Human Relations Commission meeting for the City of Peekskill. I am Susie Erdy. I am the chair of the Human Relations Commission. This is the first time that we have met together in person since February 2020. We're pretty excited about that. I brought pie. It's over there. Help yourself. Strawberry rhubarb crumb from the Adirondacks. I don't play. So I'm going to ask my fellow HRC members who are here around the table to briefly introduce themselves, and then I will introduce our guests. And we have 4 guests tonight for presentation. So, Nicola, would you begin, please?
Yes, I'm Nicola DeMarco. I guess I should look into this camera. Nicola DeMarco, I'm a new resident of Peekskill, only here a little over 2 years, and a new member of the Human Relations Commission. Thank you.
Tricia.
I am Tricia Pickering. I'm a 20-year resident. I have previously been working on the Police Reform Task Force, and now I've just joined the commission, and I'm very excited, and thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Joe Shooter. Been a Peekskillian for about 20. Done various things in the past, and I've been on the Human Relations Commission for some time now, and hope to get a really good result in this meeting.
All right. I would like to introduce, first of all, City Manager Andy Stewart. He's the one holding multiple pieces of technology. He will be joined by Chief Don Halmy from the Police Department. He's back. Oh, you can't see him. They will be, the first part of the meeting, they will be presenting to us an update on progress on recommendations made by the Police Reform Task Force, which worked all of last fall, winter, and into the spring, and presented a series of recommendations to the state. And the city manager and the police chief have been going over those recommendations and are going to report to us. The reason they're reporting to us as the Human Relations Commission is that Common Council, recognizing that it had a heck of a lot on its plate and knowing that this was an important thing to keep moving forward, asked the Human Relations Committee to take on a monitoring role, for lack of a better term, where we would periodically hear from the city manager and the chief of police about progress on the various recommendations that were made in that report to the state on April 1st of this year. The second part of our meeting and we'll take some questions. We'll have a period of questions after Andy and Chief Halmy make their presentations. If you're on the Zoom, please type your questions into the chat. Nicola will be monitoring that chat, and he'll jot down questions, and at appropriate moments he'll be able to fit those into the conversation. After that part of our program is completed, we will welcome Valerie Eaton and Derek Wright from the Peekskill chapter of the NAACP. Valerie is president of the Peekskill chapter, and Derek is chair. Thank you. Chair of the Criminal Justice Committee of the Peekskill NAACP. They will be talking to us about a proposal that the NAACP is prepared to put forward about a Civilian Criminal Review Board, CCRB, which is definitely one of the recommendations that was made by the Police Reform Task Force in its report to the state this past April. And I'm about to admit Valerie's in the waiting room. Okay, there you are. So thank you for all of you who are on the Zoom and or on the telephone, and thank you to all of you who came to the conference room tonight. This is very exciting to see so many people here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief and the City Manager. Chief, come up higher.
Can you screen share that
yep.
recommendations list? See if we get the camera going in the right direction. Just move this phone over here.
So just as a little bit of background before we get started on this, the task force met over the course of last year and put together a very comprehensive set of recommendations. I think they number approximately 50, and they range in complexity and the degree to which we can take action on them locally versus ones that require other jurisdictions and partnerships and so on, like around mental health intervention and stuff like that. I'm speaking pretty loudly. Is someone saying they can't hear me?
Your voice was dropping.
Okay, so this report, which was published, I think, in April last year in compliance with the state mandate, this year, sorry, time flies, has a list. It's been published on the website for months now, and it has a list of recommendations. And Chief Halmy is going to just speak to how we're doing on a bunch of different items before we get over to the CCRB, which is a complex kind of policy matter which requires City Council. The CCRB, just so folks know, it's a new law which would be adopted through the usual process that the City Council uses under state law to create a new law. There's a public hearing and things like that. And so Susie, if you could just advance down to the list of just on the left, there's a table of contents. You just kind of go down so that we get to the point where we're looking at the abbreviated list of recommendations. Keep going, keep going. Yeah, list, right? Yes, click the first one. There you go. So that should show us the first. They were divided up into organized by the committees that were working on them and putting them forward. And so there's 13 under education, training, and equipment. Yeah, if you could stay up on education, that would be great. Just scroll up a little. There you go. Yeah. You want to start off? Or?
Sure. So when we look, first of all, it's great to see everybody. I know it was very impersonal, kind of just being on virtual meetings, but it is great to see everybody, and I'm glad so many people came out tonight. When we look at the list of the proposals here, we kind of separate them into a couple of different categories. One category is going to be the budget, how it affects, how the costs are going to affect the city and implementing it, and then therefore timing when it can be implemented. Contractual issues, there are some things that need to be changed with the PBA contract in order to accomplish. The third thing would be kind of the outside sources that will be involved in making certain pitches towards civil service, addressing the state and making changes, things like, if the council were to make resolutions, basically asking for the state to make a change or civil service to make change. That would kind of be outside the realm of the physical actions of the police department for the most part. And then the fourth category would really be the meat and potatoes of everything that we can, start doing. So it's really category 4 that we're able to jump right into. As I said, the meat and potatoes and the topics that, easily we can just start changing. So, obviously this list is in a certain order. First one being negotiating change in the collective bargaining. I fully expect that's going to happen. That's something that the City of Peekskill Police Department currently has in the contract, that we have 24 hours of training that's mandated. We want to up that to 40 hours of training that's mandated. The state tells us what we have to do training-wise, and it's very difficult to put all these training blocks together and get it accomplished in the course of a year. So by adding another 16 hours of training, which for the most part will be 4 more 4-hour blocks of training, we could add a lot more training and there's another section here that talks about the training that we would do. So I fully expect that, with PBA negotiations starting, I fully would expect that to, not be a big sticking point. The budget, number 2, which is increasing the training budget, that's going to be a budget discussion come, September, October, November, when that whole process takes place. So that's kind of out of our hands temporarily.
A big one that just recently happened was, we talk about something called ABLE, which is Active Bystander Law Enforcement, and it's actually an excellent program. I know I sat through it, kind of an invitation into, it was like a webinar on what takes place in this training class. I know some, I believe Valerie run that class or in that webinar, and I know a few others were. It really seemed excellent. One of the biggest sticking points is that they mandate that the entire department has to buy into it, has to take the training. It's an extensive training, and it's not something you can break up. Typically, we have to break up a lot of our trainings in order, because being a 24/7, 365-day operation, we typically have to break up our training into different slots throughout different times of day. In other words, we might have training from 8 p.m. to midnight. Obviously, like a company like Able couldn't come in and commit to that. They would say, all your officers have to be in on a Monday, half have to be in on Monday, the other half have to be on a Tuesday. It's kind of difficult to navigate. It becomes an overtime issue, which is kind of talked about in the previous line. Again, that being a budget thing. But one thing that's just happened, and we've been in contact with them over the course of the last couple of months, and it's kind of an invitation only, but they have approached us about sending a couple of officers through their curriculum training course to become certified instructors, that we could do this course through the department. We'd also be responsible. We'd be not forced. It's a requirement that we would have to do some offer our services like to some other departments or some other whoever's kind of like requesting it. If we're able to send our instructors to other locations, we do have to commit to that. But it really is an excellent opportunity that we have right now. So we are, we have told them we're interested in doing that, and hopefully that can take place. Next one talks about the training, and we talk about, different things we would like to do: de-escalation training, anti-racism, racial implicit bias, mental health crisis, trauma, stress management, wellness training for police officers, procedural justice. These are all the new topics that we really want to incorporate into this additional 16-hour blocks that once the contract signs or gets negotiated, even if it's agreed upon before the contract is signed somehow, that we can start instituting that certainly into the 2020 police calendar and moving forward. We just this past June we did a training on implicit bias and microaggressions, and it was from a professional consulting company, and they really did do an excellent job. That people really had some really good conversations going and brought up topics that really got a little heated at times with people talking amongst each other, and what started as people being very dismissive of each other in the beginning and saying that's stupid, that you shouldn't have felt that way, and then kind of in the end of the class, I think there was a lot more understanding and a lot more opened eyes about why people feel about certain things, and that's something that we're going to expand upon. That was kind of the initial exposure to it, and I've told my training officer, this is something that we're going to do annually. It's not something it's not like a one and done type thing that we just throw in as a class. It's something that we'll keep doing. So all those trainings, we have them all in on our list of training classes that we will be doing. We're trying to schedule. We have a few coming up with crisis intervention training that's being offered in October, that we have a few officers of training, because it's a 40-hour block. It's you have to commit a week of an officer. And listen, I'm going to preface everything we talk about tonight by saying our department is understaffed. We operate right now currently at minimum. We operate at minimum every day, and it's very difficult to have the luxury of extra officers when it comes to scheduling. So that's something that we hope to improve upon moving forward and just get more activity out of. And if I'm going too slow on this, let me know, because I know there's 40-something things on here. I think we're on.
You might have to be selective.
Yeah. definitely we can, we can move up on this. Things like dash cams had a big presentation 2 days ago. They're going to give us all the information. Same thing with tasers. There's a new taser coming out that it is definitely supposed to be an upgrade. So we had a presentation on that, and a lot of new training programs through that with virtual reality now. The virtual reality training with all types of scenarios. And what's great about that, and I know there's a couple of council members here, is they invite like council members, community members to take these trainings too, to see it, the decision-making process. So we definitely would like to, look further into that. We talked about roll call presentations. I'll show you quick that we've created on our police website, an invitation page basically for community groups, throughout Peekskill and outside that might want to come in and offer services to, to our officers and be able to comment, roll call, discuss, different options, opportunities. Some of the things we've been working with, a company called Choice, which does mental health advocacy within the county. They offer counseling, they offer support. So they want to come in to talk to us. A few other groups that, we're trying to get in as far as doing some presentations. We talked about barcodes. We started putting out some cards that offer in English and Spanish. Like this one will be my card. Every officer in the department has one personally made. That's basically has their name on it. It has the QR code directly to the police website. Has a QR code to the to getting like an accident report. And as we find other things that we can add QR codes to, as you see, we don't have a lot of space for adding information, and then, but we can probably get a couple more on there if we have something that we can add QR codes. But every officer has these personalized in their name. It has the information on here about where to go, what to, make comments, anything about, their interactions. What big topic items we have. I know the community survey. We talk about things maybe going to be outside the police. I believe the HRC is really going to be involved with doing a community survey.
We're going to work with the NAACP and other organizations to develop a community survey. We don't have a timeline for that yet. That's going to be a conversation for next month's meeting. But we started talking about it. So we wanted to hear from you all first.
Yep. Okay, great. I know we've added to the police evaluation form. We've added a whole community engagement section that discusses, whether or not the officer is properly, engaging themselves with the public. We also have just worked on a community, we talk about that survey with the community. We also have one with the police department, on officers giving suggestions on what they think is working, what they don't think is working, and what they'd like to see added, to our approach towards community policing. I know a big one on here is like to redesign the website. It's a budgetary issue, and it's also, one of the things we look at right now is say, hey, let's take what we have, let's start adding to what we have, and then we can look to do an overhaul. We can look to get a whole new website, but instead of saying let's not do anything and then wait till we get a website and add to the website, we pretty much started just adding to our website. Right in the front page, we have a banner that says now, how to contact, how to make contact for comments, right there on the front page. One of the big ones I know we talked about was Spanish language translation. What we have in the police department is every police car has a cell phone attached to it, and every one of these cell phones, you can do parking enforcement with the cell phone. You can use it as a camera to take crime scene photos if you need to. But we've also added a Spanish language translation app onto each one of those phones, so officers on the street, if they run into a situation, we do have a lot of Spanish-speaking officers, and we encourage that as the first course of action to request somebody to come. Just like we've always called state police if we needed someone, county police, and likewise they do the same to us. They'll call us and say, "Do you have a Spanish officer that has this with interpretation?" And we're always there to assist. But this really helps us in those tough cases when we don't have real good translation available now. Now we can use this Translate app. We've also, I know I spoke with the city manager a week ago that we got a proposal on putting a phone in the police lobby that is going to directly go to a translator through the front desk. So that will be, I sent back saying that we're not going to wait till the budget on that. We're going to approve it. We have some money in our current budget, so we can just have that installed. So I don't have the time yet, but I did respond back saying, yeah, let's go with this, and that's approved. We talked about lead programs, partnerships. I talked about the choice program again with mental health, and it does. There's some. I'm trying to blank on like some mediation service through there that they can help us with. So we have been in contact with the director there who has offered their services to us. We're in constant contact with the Westchester Crisis that deals with mental health. Getting teams out here, whether it's right then and there that we need a team to respond, or if we need follow-up visits. They've been very very open to help us as best that they can. We've contacted an organization called Hope Not Handcuffs, and Hope Not Handcuffs is a drug diversionary program that people can come into a police station and basically say, I need help. I would like to get services, and we have a whole contact process to get people the help that they need. That instead of looking at arrest as the easy way to solve a problem from a police standpoint, that we have additional services that we can refer people to and get them more involved. The manual, the police manual, which is something that myself and I know Derek Wright, I saw Jeff Deskovich on the Zoom. We put a lot of time into this. We made a lot of changes on a lot of the SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. These procedures will come out. We are working to make the department manual available online. It's a big project. It's a lot of work that needs to be done with a lot of fleshing out of basically line by line, going through fine-tooth comb with everything. When we put that product out there, on the web, we want it to be the best product we can. So we are doing, starting to work on that, but it is a lot of work. But we will get that out. CCRB, I know that that's something that's going to be discussed further in detail, but there definitely has been a push to move forward on that. So that's something that will be discussed, a little while further at this meeting. A few of the things in the hiring and the recruiting, involve non-police, they involve civil service requests. Those are the things that we've kind of, we're going to look to possibly put resolutions, things like that together that, can put pressure on different agencies to make the changes that not only we believe should take place, but I know a lot of other municipalities, including the county itself, believe would be, worthwhile changes. The ID cards, police ID cards at incidents, we do give them out. Again, this is the ID card. We integrated the QR code with the ID card. It's in English and Spanish. It gives every officer's name. Every officer had it printed out. Gives the day, the call, incident number, a little narrative section if needed. So every officer has that, and every officer gives that out at what we would consider to be any type of enforcement activity, any type of activity where someone is stopped and detained, where they don't feel they're free to go. That could be on a traffic stop when they're just given a warning, but there has to be a record that that it took place. So people should be seeing these cards, being handed out, and they're also given out anytime someone needs information. You know, it would be if you, like a typical example of how we use these cards in the past would be your windshield is broken but we can't get a hold of you. So we might put this on your car windshield, on your car window and say, there was an incident that occurred, here's the number, please contact the police. You know, so it's kind of a instead of just doing a business card, we want it to be a little more multifunctional. In September, we hope to put forth an Explorers program that will be, it's part of the fall program. I know the school is interested in doing that. I know a few of our officers think it's a great idea, and we would have started that prior to this whole reform process even started. That was in the works to do. The pandemic kind of put a crimp on that, but that will take place. I know the SROs are a big topic. We had a big sit down a few weeks ago, and the SROs are working with the school administrators in order to put the best program forward, trying to get more involved in programs like Parents Night Out, town hall presentations, just giving more accessibility and making sure that our SROs are really getting an opportunity to address everyone. I know our complaint was there were people that felt they didn't really know what the SRO did, what they stood for, why they were in the school. I mean, I think the pandemic played a lot of part in that too. I think when that survey went out, I think we were, in remote learning or hybrid learning. So I think it just became a difficult year, as everybody knows. I don't have to tell people that, but that's something we are working to improve. We have a registry for people at risk, just like I showed you the community engagement. We also put together like a special needs registry. This has its own tab on the police department website. This is something that we'll encourage people to fill out, whether it's somebody with could be somebody with dementia, could be somebody children with autism, it could be people with mental health issues and concerns. We do have a system through our records management where we can put all this information in there. It allows us to, have an idea of who and what situations we might be, dealing with when we're getting called about individuals, about, what might set somebody off, what might be sensitive topics, what things to avoid with somebody, where they may go, who are people that they rely on, for that they do feel safe with, or they do feel that they can talk to. So we have that. I know Patrick is here from our, for promoting a lot of stuff. So that's something that definitely will be pushing through, through his department as far as getting, this type of information out to the public. The crisis intervention training I talked about, how we're getting that. We do have some officers that have taken the training already. Our goal is to have everybody trained on it. As I said, we have 3 in October. It's a 40-hour class, so it is big. But every available space we have to send officers, we will be doing that. And new officers coming out of the academy are getting this training, so that's a big thing. That's a big thing too. There's something on here about hiring a social worker for the police department. That's something that will be discussed in the upcoming budget. Again, as I said, September, October, going through that. Just talking about, one talks about police personal safety and wellness. We did we put together a survey for officers that basically talk about, what services do you think we're lacking in? What services do you need? Do you know who to call if you're feeling depressed? Do you know who to call if you're feeling, despondent on something? One of the things we always ask, new officers coming on is, how do you deal with stress? What's something, if you worked in the retail industry before you became a police officer, what was the most stress you ever had? And how did you deal with that? Well, that might not compare with the most stress that you could have as a police officer. And I can tell you firsthand that I've had stresses that affected me as a parent, that affected me as a police officer, that affected me, as a person. So it's important to know what your outlets are and where to go. We have a training class coming up that will address some of these issues. And, that's kind of the bulk, a quick rundown of the 40 plus proposals here. I could say something on every single one of them, but I'm not going to take up too much time. And if I missed anything on anyone, I'm open to fill you in on where we stand on anything else that maybe I glossed over right now.
Thank you. We did have one question in the chat regarding progress and updates. So could we create a spreadsheet with recommendations, with each recommendation and their status and their updates and their next steps? We can put that on Google Docs, for example, so that you as your team, you and Andy and your officers make progress on these recommendations. You can enter that in to the spreadsheet, and then that could be a very helpful tool for us in our monitoring role and also in terms of accountability and transparency to the public.
Absolutely. I think actually we do have
Yeah, we already created a version of that
Excellent.
between Chief and I for tracking the progress. So.
All right, so maybe we can create a version that's available for public viewing, or at least
It would get outdated very quickly.
it would. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah,
All right.
so we can look at that. for
All
sure.
right. Do we have any other questions within the chat?
No.
Not yet? All right. So, Joe.
Yeah, I would have asked these questions, but it seems that they're all covered in your document, in your program. But the ones I was particularly interested in was the mental health and community policing aspect, which you seem to be developing and getting into some kind of process within your organization. So I was pleased to see all that and the emphasis perhaps on social worker within the departments. But I believe community policing should be a natural, fit for the department with some sub pieces underneath that to handle all of the new pieces that you're going to be working with in terms of bettering the force to work with people under all conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would add is that, 10 years ago, we were a department of 62. We're currently budgeted for 57, so that's a 5 officer difference right there. And we currently are operating at 52. So we're operating at 10 less than we did just 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, we did have a community policing unit that, really got out there, and kind of had like a better pulse of the people, I think. And some of the people I've talked about in a forum that they talked about their interactions with the West Side group that we did through community policing. And we may never be able to get back to the way it was. Lieutenant Johansson did just over the top excellent work with all that. So we'll never be able to get that back right now. We're not going to jump from 52 to 62, but I think the goal is to kind of get back to what she had started there. One of the other suggestions on here is to have like a full-time sergeant that is going to be able to oversee a lot of projects and a lot of the community policing.
Yeah, council's going to have to fix your budget.
Yeah. And the one thing I didn't say, which I meant to add was, because just glossing over things, is that very soon too, we will have stats and a stats page as part of the website that we'll start being able to put out statistics, and people have asked about that. So, very soon, I would expect to see some stats being put out. We'll put a tab out, just for statistics. So thanks.
Are there any questions from within the room? Valerie?
Yes. So, great progress. Thank you very much. My microphone. Okay. Quickly. So it's a 2-part question, but they are in tandem. So you said that the training you received earlier on implicit given by the consulting company, you said it was effective. Let's just say that. So, and you said that this is going to be a yearly thing, and you also have a form on your website that says that, it's open to the public to kind of fill in, like if they have a business, they have anything that they can contribute to the police department that you might be able to consider. Would that also include additional trainers in that aspect? because that was something that I was very concerned about, getting training by one particular entity that didn't
Yeah, I
necessarily
think
have.
that was partially the goal and kind of what got the ball rolling with that.
Okay, that's all.
Other questions from within the room for Chief or, oh, Tricia, I'm sorry.
Thank you. You have made a lot of progress since the task force took a break in April. Do you foresee any promotions within the department? Because I know that we are still looking for a female, perhaps detective. So I was just wondering, I know that you are down officers and you're understaffed, but do you see any promotions coming from within?
What holds us up promotionally right now is our numbers. There's the old expression, you can't have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Although maybe I can't even say that saying anymore. I don't know. So part of learning, we all learn. But the reality is that today, as our department is currently constructed, I don't have the position, I don't have the personnel that if I made promotions to cover patrol. Now, patrol is the heart and soul of the police department. When you mentioned the detective position has been open for a while. I also have 2 lieutenant positions open, and the lieutenant position is the most important from the standpoint of the administration and especially, listen, a lot of the things we're discussing here are things I need to be able to lean on, on a lieutenant to do. So really, the personnel issues have held us up right now. But you have to realize the police entrance exam, which should have expired a year ago, and basically the list has kind of been a little bit backlogged. It went for 5 years instead of 4. So the new list was finally given, the new test, I should say, was finally given this year. So we are hoping that will open up, basically the availability for a lot more people to hire, and then therefore, once in the pyramid scheme, once the bottom fills up, we can move everybody else up. So that's the goal. Yeah.
Any other questions for, okay, over here? Yep.
I heard what you said about, can I hold it? Yeah. I heard what you said about, you might not get back to community policing like the old beat cop. Wondering if I think that's something that's viable that, that we should really try to think about, because, Peekskill's not a big city where, the police will be able to interact with, the store owners and people in the community. Of course, we get the manpower. And talk about manpower, from a recruiting standpoint, do you go to colleges or look to the VA for personnel, and let them know we're having a job fair and things of that nature to try to, increase your numbers and advise, young students when the tests are coming out, things of that nature. I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but
yeah. The test just came out in May, which was, as I said, it was the first time in 5 years. So we did try to do some recruiting. I know we worked with the NAACP, did a little virtual kind of Q&A. We made that available to people. One of the goals of the Explore program, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's a program for young people who are interested in becoming police officers. Explorers in general is just something that works towards a particular career field. So explorers don't mean they want to be cops, but the Explore law enforcement program will be for people that want to become police officers. So part of that program that we have that we developed is going to be a test, like a test prep. That we're going to start people, preparing them to be able to take the test. Because you can recruit anyone you want. If they don't score well enough on the test, you're and that's the same with promotions.
Yeah.
The best cop in the department across the street, if he doesn't score in the top 3, and that's something we talk about in the recruitment thing, the whole rule of 3. If he doesn't score in the top 3, he or she is not eligible to be promoted. And it's the same thing on the test. It's not just getting the word out about that these jobs are coming up and that it has to be taken, but it's getting them prepared to be able to score well also. Because there's nothing worse than investing in someone and then because of civil service reasons, never having the availability to reach them. And just the community policing kind of, as we started discussing, what I said was, we really got back to the way it was, 10 cops more than we have today. Certainly not in my career. I would see that. That's not to say it can't happen, down the road. But that's what I was trying to say is bringing back or getting more people involved can hopefully get us, like you talking about the interactions with the store, things like that. Those are all goals to get, people out there and being more familiar with, with the community. So those are all our part of the goals. It's just more difficult when every officer is running from call to call to call and not really having that opportunity. One thing about police work is it's all paid for. So.
And I just have a couple of points, I guess. The ABLE program, that's like a my brother's keeper type program. It seemed like when I read the background on it, basically saying, if you're in a situation, kind of check the police officer so he doesn't go overboard. I mean, that's a cultural thing. I worked in corrections for 26 years, so I know sometimes trying to get people on board with doing certain things and changing ways, change their mentality. You think that's something that, as the officers will buy into that?
I do. I do think they buy into it. Listen, I've seen it personally. On very low scale, issues where people, just say, okay, we got it. And everybody back down, everybody's cool. I think that the key is to, have good officers, obviously. That if you have good officers, then you'll have, a situation where people are either making the right decisions or people next to them, are gonna, hopefully force them to make the right decisions. And I believe that that's both in the decisions we make as cops towards day-to-day work. I believe that having a racially and culturally diverse police department, it also gets officers that, if two officers from different backgrounds are working together, that it allows one that may not understand, why people do certain things or why they react certain ways. Having a more diverse force, you have the other one, hopefully is going to say, hey, he's doing this, maybe that's how, he was raised, or that's, was acceptable where he was from, but, it's more important to teach them that it's just not acceptable then. So I think that's part of diversity too.
Just for the mental health of the officers too, like I said, how come you don't have like a chaplaincy program?
We do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
we have a chaplaincy program here. And our chaplain is a local pastor that works in the church here in the community. And he's at the police station a couple of times a week, talking to officers. He does ride-alongs with the officers, kind of tries to get as much one-on-one, basically just it's difficult to talk to people in group settings or when people are standing around, no one wants to say, maybe, I'm a little down, I'm a little stressed, I'm a little depressed, something like that, but, he'll go out in the car and ride with them. Listen, during the COVID, obviously, things have been a little, we've had to hold up on things, obviously, but that is part of his program, and he's part of our training program, moving forward too, and also on this training.
And he's looking at me, so that's okay.
Thank you very much. I need to move on to the second half of the program because I'm mindful that Valerie and Derek have a schedule, and that we moved our meeting up an hour so that they could be here. And thanks to our technical difficulties at the beginning, we ate through some of that time. I apologize for that. But if you would, Valerie, do you want to switch seats with Chief so that you can? And Derek, do you want to come up and sit next to Valerie so you can both be on camera?
Yeah, I don't need to sit here. But... Derek.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
gotta aim that camera a little bit better because all we have is Valerie.
Hold on, I don't know if you can really get this.
She's pretty.
Yeah, well, we got Valerie right now. That's Derek. He's gonna be on
Okay,
now.
okay. All right, so maybe it's too loose to handle your own camera. All right. Again, thank you very much, Valerie and Derek Wright from the Peekskill NAACP chapter for coming today to talk with us about the proposal that you all have been working on the CCRB, which was very much one of the recommendations of the Police Reform Task Force. So, take it away.
So I want to address what you just said, actually, because it's only a small fraction, actually, of the task force and everything that they submitted. So there was a transparency and accountability committee, and part of that submission was to have a CCRB. They did a lot of research. Let me back up just a little bit also. Historically, the PCL NAACP has gone to Chief Comey to try to submit some kind of format of review by citizens. And we've gone back and forth to the drawing board on this probably since about 2016. I'm going to say when Martin McDonald was actually the president of the PCL NAACP. When I became president 3 years ago, I want to say, time flies, we went back to the drawing board. And as a matter of fact, Derek Wright was not part of the criminal justice team at that time either. So we had a whole new team. We went back to Chief Comey, came back to the NAACP. It still wasn't to anybody's satisfaction. And so Derek, having law enforcement in his background and knowing a lot of the rules and regulations as it relates to having a CCRB, working in the New York City Police Department, we said, let's try this again. And it just so happened, it coincided with doing the police reform last year into this year. So we continue to do the work that we did. Not to be disrespectful to anyone, not to kind of seem like we were doing things behind the scenes or anything. Our chair, Derek Wright, actually did try to work, I believe, with the chair of Transparency and Accountability. And because he wasn't on that committee, it just seemed to be going in a different direction. As far as I know, Derek, I won't speak directly for you, but it was going in a different direction than where we were going. And we wanted to actually have a plan for how the CCRB would work from A to Z. Not necessarily fueling what a CCRB should have and, going forward with another company to write it, we actually wrote it. It was a great thing because Derek actually has a professor of law that he was able to confer with and actually look this over, comb through it, and make sure that it actually met the standards of a CCRB. So that's just a little history and a little of the reason why we actually went on with doing this. I don't know that we want to read this, verbatim because it is a few pages long.
I think I can, Andy sent it to me, so I can screen share it if you want.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine, yeah. So in our process, we realized that going directly to the chief was not the right thing to do, which we have been doing since 2016. So now knowing the hierarchy within the city of Peekskill and knowing that Andy and chief and, the mayor and the deputy mayor was kind of in charge of looking at what this was going to be presented to the council, that's the route we went. We always have public meetings and always invite people to come to our public meetings. If you've been to any of the meetings, you've heard me say, we're going to be doing a CCRB, and no one would respond. And I'm like, okay, used to that. It's okay. So nevertheless, we did that. We continued our work as the NAACP the way we always do, publicly. So I just wanted to just state that. Moving forward, I don't know if you guys want to summarize each section, how you want this to be done.
And tell me if I need to jump to a particular page.
Well, first, I guess, I don't know, Derek, do you want to start out with any particular sections that we did look at what was submitted? And we actually agree with some parts of it. And I also want to say that nothing is set in stone. We are so willing to work with the community, with city council, with whomever needs to be involved in this process to refine it where it needs to be refined, okay? And so a lot of the I guess, the meat of it would be probably how it's formed and who makes it up. So there was opposition in that some thought, I don't know if it's some or, I got the opposition from one person that I remember, and I'm sorry because I don't remember a whole lot of what happened because there was a lot of meetings. And one of the oppositions was that the CCRB should be made of all civilians. And after further review, because, listen, I'm not an expert in CCRBs or police tactics, but after further review and speaking with the law professor and speaking with the subject matter experts, one of the things that they said was, well, if you have that, who's going to be your expert on policing? Who's going to be the people who tell you how this works? So that made sense to me. Not only did it make sense, but if we're talking about not us against them, which we never did that, we never talked about, well, it's us against the police, and we never wanted it to be that. In that vein, we wanted to make sure that there were a police officer involved in the process, and not to be the majority, but to be the voice of a subject matter expert, if you will. So, Derek, you want to kind of summarize some of that?
Okay, thank you. My name is Derek Wright. I am a retired first grade detective from the NYPD, 20 years of service. I've been a resident of Peekskill for about 11 years now, and I was a chair for the policies and procedures group within the police task force. That's where Valerie and I pretty much met and started speaking. She asked me to come on board as the chair for the NAACP's Criminal Justice Committee towards the end of 2021. 20, which I agreed to do. In that period of time before I actually took the seat, I started doing research. I started looking at different towns within Westchester who had an up and running CCRB. The one town that I found that did have the CCRB was Ossining, New York. Okay, Ossining is a town as opposed to Peekskill being a city, so of course different rules apply. So what I did was I got a copy of their CCRB and I dissected it. There was a lot of areas in it that were weak, a lot of areas in it that were really wouldn't apply to Peekskill, so we took those out and I started putting in things that I thought, and this is just us thinking, applied to Peekskill. Along the way, I spoke to a friend of mine, Professor Kurt Burkhalter, who was also a retired first grade detective at NYPD. But he was the smart one and went to law school. And he got a law degree, and he's a professor at New York Law. So when he found out what I was doing, he asked, could he be involved with it? Because he had a 21st century policing project that he wanted to get off the ground, and he wanted to know if he could make this a part of that. He was going to use his students to have their input, and it was going to be a really robust input of information that was going to come our way from him. So definitely took him on board, and he started checking all of the statutes that we were putting in the code, taking some things out that were inapplicable and putting other things in that were necessary. We know that there are certain persons in Peekskill that have issues with some of the things that we have in our CCRB. But what we're trying to do is be an all-inclusive, fair around the board CCRB. It has to be fair to civilians, and it also has to be fair to law enforcement. Okay, the issue that came up, which was the first issue for them, was Section X5, selection and appointment. We think that 7 members should be selected to be in the CCRB. 5 of which are going to be civilians. By the way, we're calling Peekskill City Manager on the carpet for this. He's going to be the police commissioner. Okay, he's the man. So he's basically going to be the one that's putting all of this together. We have 5 civilians and 2 members of the Peekskill Police Department. A lot of people say, well, why can't it be an all-civilian board? So far, from what our research has shown us, is that there's only really 2 CCRBs up and running in New York State. 2, New York City and Ossining. They're up and running. So,
Good, bad, or indifferent.
yeah, good, bad, or indifferent. It's just 2 up and running. Now,
For 200
in the country.
200 in the country.
Okay.
In the entire country, that's 4 per state.
Yeah, yeah. So we have 2, and we are trying to be the 3rd. Okay. We want 5 civilians and 2 members of the service. People ask why you have to have cops on your CCRB. The reason being, how else, first of all, are the civilians going to be trained in proper police procedure other than being trained by a police officer from that jurisdiction? That's number 1. And if the civilians are not trained to know what it looks like for a police officer to be doing his job professionally and in the right way, how would they know if they're doing it wrong? So that's our reasoning behind that. We're not saying that if we get this CCRB up and running, things can't change in the future. We're anticipating change. The world is going to change in the future. So why shouldn't our CCRB? But for right now, in order to get the civilian members trained, properly trained, they need to be trained by police officers. Okay, so that's one of the most common. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
That's your microphone.
I'm sorry. Oh,
That's one.
okay. So the members of the CCRB was an important thing, and what we thought was very important was we want to add a civilian investigator within this process. A civilian investigator is someone that Mr. Stewart is going to be hiring. This person will have to have either some law enforcement background or private investigations background, should be a resident of Peekskill, and they will be hired by Mr. Stewart. He is going to act as one of the investigators on every CCRB case. So not only will the Peekskill Police Department have an investigator, now we will also have a civilian investigator. And that should lead to more transparency. You know, something that the community really needs. And sure.
Is that civilian, as you anticipated, the civilian investigator in addition, separate from the CCRB or part of the CCRB?
No, he's going to be separate from the CCRB. He's not going to be one of the members,
Okay.
but he is going to be, yes, he's going to be a part of it. And we'll have to confer with not only the civilian members, but with the police department.
Are you ready for questions?
I just want to just back up a little bit, and I want to bring this out because Derek said something very important. I don't know that anybody really caught it, and he said that the city manager, whether it be Andy, would act as a commissioner. We don't have a commissioner in Peekskill because that's not how the makeup of our police department is. Okay, so commissioners are typically in large cities or, you know, New York City, they have police commissioners. Who else? I don't know if most large cities have commissioners. So that's why he said that. So I just want to make sure I brought that out. So yes, we are ready for questions.
Do we have any questions first on the chat?
No.
All right. Then let's take some questions from in the room. Who would like to?
Well,
raise their hand?
first of all, I don't have a question. I would like to make a statement, if I may. I think I agree in part with some of what you're saying. I agree in part with some of what they're saying. I disagree in part with a number of things that they're saying. First of all, I think accuracy is important, and when we're talking about that there's only 2 civilian review boards in the state, I think that between being Austin and New York City, I think that's inaccurate, because I think Albany has one currently. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that Albany has one. So that's 3 that I know of offhand, and I believe there may be a couple more. Second of all, I wouldn't question the validity of saying that Mr. Derek spoke with me during the process. Derek may have mentioned to me, but we never entertained, a detailed conversation about that. He let me know what his plans were, and I totally disagreed with using Ossining as a model. Reason being, just because Ossining has the same demographic and same size as us, why limit our ability to choose what's going to be in our CCRB because of the size of or demographic of a city? We are forming a CCRB for the first time. So therefore, we have the ability to create the model. We have the ability to look at CCRBs from every state, from every side, and then we can pick and choose what would be best fit for Peekskill. We used another thing about using Ossining was that the city of Austin Citizens Review Board wasn't even really functional. If we were calling that up and running, then it would seriously been on life support. What I would like to add, he wasn't able to make it because the information was brought up at the last minute that we were having this public. He was going to be on the chat. But I have a gentleman from the Ossining Task Force himself, Mr. Kendall Buchanan, who would be more than willing to come in and testify that the Ossining Review Board was not up to snuff. So, like the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. If you're using a model or basing it off a model that's not even accepted by the people of that own city, then what can we expect to get from that? Second of all, the reason why the Peekskill Task Force model wasn't finished because that was based off of recommendations from the city manager, Mr. Andy Stewart, who said we would need certain things to be done as far as communication with the council and communication with them. And plus, I respect the fact that they talk to lawyers about getting some insight. And New York law is a very prestigious university, but let's not get it confused with New York University, NYU, 2 different institutions, first of all. But I still respect that. However, he's not in the same category using students from New York law as we were getting expertise from an organization called Nicole. Nicole is the leading national organization as far as helping administer CCRBs. Okay. Yes, there would have been a cost. We even looked up the cost and researched the cost. It was only $5,000, which is a small fee. They help us with the legal language. Okay. They help you as far as dealing with the council and as far as dealing with the police. Another thing about this whole situation is that, and this shouldn't be lost in the whole process, is that when the governor put the recommendation forth for a task force to be developed, it was supposed to be community oriented. Our recommendations for our CCRB were vetted by the people and the residents of the city of Peekskill. Numerous times, we welcomed their suggestions. We were on Zoom where everybody could come in. This process that they're submitting here hasn't been vetted by the people. It hasn't been vetted by the citizens who are going to be affected by it. And they haven't had to go, I don't even know how we even got to this process here. It seems like we circumvented the entire process. I know Bill Belichick is a great football coach, and I think he would love the end around that was performed by this particular situation to get to where we are now, where we are in this whole process. I think he would really appreciate a good end around, this end around. But secondly, and thirdly, Nicole is the leading organization, which we were going to be using. It was of a minimal cost. We were vetted by the city. And we also talked to the Attorney General's office. They made recommendations and suggestions and even complimented the references and suggestions that we made for the Peekskill Task Force. The Peekskill Task Force Transparency and Accountability and Transparency Committee draft was put on hold once again because Andy suggested that we could only go so far because we needed approval. And that's where we were at. We were waiting, and we would be looking forward to working with anybody. And it's really something because during our process, during the month process, when we were working on our CCRB, I always hinted that I felt as though there was an undercurrent of our work being hijacked. And lo and behold, I somewhat feel as though that was correct. I feel as though being a member of the NAACP, I was not even informed of their submission before they submitted it. And I think there are other members of the NAACP who were not informed that they were submitting a CCRB. So I think, I appreciate this draft. They did a lot of work with it, but to submit something that represents members of the NAACP without even having the members having a chance to look at it and vote on it, I think was a little bit inappropriate. And I think there's other people that may have had comments, so I'll say that for them, and also time for a rebuttal of the rebuttal.
May I comment on that? Yes. Okay. Joseph Teal, I know him from the police task force. I got you. He was the chair of the accountability and transparency committee, as I was the chair of the policies and procedures committee. Yes, we did speak a couple of times. We spoke before we were on the same Zoom for Nicole, because I was there. And then I invited you to a Zoom with Yohaya Alvarez, who was the New York City second whip for their CCRB, just to try to give them a roundabout view of what CCRB is really supposed to be. Now, everything that Mr. Teal has submitted for his recommendations for his committee, they were pretty much ideas he was grabbing from other places. I was a member of New York City NYPD. I sat before CCRB within the city, probably more times than I care to admit, but I sat there. So I know exactly what they can do, what they won't do. Mr. Teal says that Ossining is not up to snuff. I never said that the CCRB in Ossining was up to snuff. What I did say is that they were in existence. I also spoke to the chair of the CCRB in Ossining, and she told me that their program is not where it really needs to be, and if we were looking to copy their, or just get the foundation from them, that we should be careful because a lot of their statutes are out of date. And that was fine because they had a very good foundation. I also spoke to the chief of police in Ossining, Chief Sylvester. Very nice man who informed me all the ins and outs of CCRB and what's going on. Now, I also thought that Albany had a CCRB that was up and running, but lo and behold, Kurt Burkhalter and his research team at New York Law, which is a very prestigious school, found out that they don't really have anything in existence. So since Ossining and Peekskill are almost identical in crime index, and population, and demographic. They have 50 members in their police department. I believe we have 52. They were the best model for me to look at. I wasn't copying their stuff word for word, but we needed a foundation, and that's where I got it. Okay, so if we're going to use different phrases, I saw Mr. Teal's recommendations from the task force, and whether I agreed with them or didn't agree with them, what I did find is it was a whole lot of, how can I say, a lot of things within it that really, to me, made no sense. And using, some of your examples, what he did with his recommendations was Mr. Teal was giving ideas. When the NAACP basically wrote a model, a complete model of what a CCRB should look like. So we took absolutely nothing from what trust me, we took nothing from what he submitted, because to me, it really made no sense. So I went in a different direction on our brief encounters, because Mr. Teal had this us versus them attitude. That's not how I wrote this. I don't believe that people is broken. They're not perfect, but I don't believe it's broken. Wherever Mr. Teal got his recommendations from, wherever he cut and pasted them from, obviously came from a place where the police department was broken. Our police department is not broken. And therefore, I thought that the police needed a fair shake. We are treating everyone else with respect. Why not treat the people that protect our town with the same respect? I think that I've basically covered everything else.
I want to respond to something, because you said that the members of the NAACP did not know. I have mentioned it. We have had meetings directly after each meeting, each general meeting, and discussed everything that we were doing. Our criminal justice meetings are public. Our general meeting is public. We're not hiding anything. We never did hide anything. Those who did not come to the meeting did not know what we were doing.
Was the report shared with everybody? The people didn't.
Which report?
The report that you submitted.
You mean the submission?
Yes.
Nobody asked for the report.
Why should we have to answer if we're members? But and
if you had asked for it, you would have gotten it. We didn't hide anything, number one. Number two, how can we give the entire membership something for them to review before they got back to us when we were submitting this in a procedural way? There was nothing more than somebody just asking. That's it. That's it. So if you didn't come to the meeting, you didn't hear about it.
May I make questions / observations?
Sure.
Everybody seems to be in agreement there's going to be a CCRB.
And something is better than nothing. I want to say that.
Well, I almost had it as a question, but Mr. Wright explained it the way he sees it, which I happen to agree with. I disagree with you that if there is a CCRB established, whether it's noted or not, so it's for your model and your law. At some point, it could be modified. It has to be.
Absolutely.
In order to fit.
Absolutely.
The changing time. Sure. So I feel, as a new member here, that at least we have consensus that there's going to be a CCRB.
Right, I'm glad that we can agree on that. I'm glad that we can agree on that. However, the thing about it is, a matter, when you talk about cutting and pasting, you talk about a lot of ideas. When we're coming in from the inception, it's best to get the best and the most knowledge to get about a particular subject. Okay. If anybody else, we talk to people from New York, and yes, Mr. Wright told us that we also talked to the Attorney General. We had conversations with the Attorney General and three of their attorneys, and they were very pleased with what we were doing and what we were suggesting, and what obviously Mr. Wright didn't be satisfied with. They were totally pleased. That's coming from the Attorney General's office of New York State, and they even vocalized that and memorialized that in the letter.
Well, with all due respect,
yeah,
I mean, I'm seeing this as a first impression myself. I don't speak for anyone else here, and I would love to look through everything that's being presented, including from Nicole.
We would love for you to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate.
Yeah, and I also, excuse me, one more second. What I do also want to say is this. It is fine for someone to say, especially an entity such as Nicole, who charges for their services, to say something is good and nice and wonderful, because they charge for their services. We did this because we know that it's something that is valuable to our community. We do everything we do because it's valuable to our community. We are volunteers. We don't get paid. We didn't get paid to do this either. I didn't pay Derek Wright to do this. We didn't pay Kurt Goldholzer to do this. We didn't pay anyone. Okay, so this was simply off of expertise and what people knew from their experience only. So even if we did, first of all, I'm glad you talked to the Attorney General. I wish that
we would have too. I wish you would have asked me.
I
if you could
invited
see it.
Derek to be there. I gave him the invitation, let him know everything that he was doing.
Well, I didn't know about it, okay?
Stop a second.
Mhm.
But he just said he advised Derek what we were doing. But he said earlier that we had to talk,
I know.
we don't
No,
talk,
I invited you.
but in order to invite me, we have to have a conversation. Here's where my situation is, guys. Peekskill has been in existence since 1814, right? And I'm sure when it came into existence, there were no black people living in Peekskill, right? Fast forward to 2021, we have a diverse community, and we still don't have a CCRB. Instead of embracing the fact that we have a strong foundation for this grassroots project, we have those that want to fight. We're not saying that it's perfect. We're not saying that it doesn't need to be tweaked. There's a lot of things that need to be changed in it, but we feel that it's a good foundation. We would be open for any suggestions, any good suggestions that display fairness in this project, fair to the community, fair to the police.
Can I just ask one question,
Mhm.
just for a point of clarity? Okay, so I appreciate very much that you took another community that mirrors the Peekskill community in its makeup and such. So can you just please state, for clarity wise, you said this was a review. So, and you also said that you were going to be nimble and agile and you were going to change it as you go. So will we have an opportunity to read what you have so far? Is it completed or?
You see the word draft?
Yes, I saw that as well.
Okay.
And
So-
I could see it on the paper too. So I just wanted to make sure. So basically what you're saying, again, so everyone hears, is that this is just a starting point. This is your
Yes.
starting point,
It's a starting point.
right? And I think, again, even being in this commission now, it's very important that it's said again out loud, that it's human relations and that we're all starting from a point where you are correct. If there are 200 in the entire country, this is a tremendous effort that you have done so far.
For free.
So you should be commended. And I hope that everyone in the room also will understand that we will need to go back and forth on this probably many times, but working together is the goal.
Thank you.
And that's all I want to do. I have to go, I'm really sorry.
I understand. I thank you for
Thank you.
saying what you did. I appreciate it. Can you say?
I can say,
All right, so let's take some questions from the room, and I've actually called for help on battery charger because I'm about to die. She's not on. I can try to turn to the host before we leave. While we're working on those technical issues, Jay, and then I don't know your name.
Jay.
J1 and J2, and then Steve. Oh, yeah, and Vanessa, this is Steve, right? So let's do, Vanessa, did you have? I can go last. No. We'll do J1, Vanessa, J2, Steve. You're J1.
Okay, so.
Can someone aim the phone and the camera at J1?
Thank you. So Derek has been a great help in working through this process, although I am on Joseph Teal's team. And I only have one question for him, and I say this without any animosity. All of the ideas that were presented for 5.5 months were vetted by a team of 22 people who commented on every presentation. Our specific charge was accountability and transparency, and we carried that out as our charge. The fact that NAACP did this and you went to the lengths that you did to develop this, I have no problem with. In reading through it, there are nuances that I would like to suggest, and now that it's open as a draft, I will do that not here, but as this continuing process goes on. But my question to you is it fair, do you think it's fair, that you avoided, not consciously and perhaps because of a time constraint, any vetting by these 22 people in which every other proposal that came forth was looked at, examined, questions coming from the board? Joseph and myself and others on this team, Tricia, we had at least a half a dozen people from other cities come on. We talked to both the police side in Newark, for example, upstate New York. This process was an intensive one, as you know. And we were very open in speaking with you, and you were very open in sharing information and helping me learn about policing. And I spoke to the chief a number of times to find out where he was coming from. And I have no question about where the city is and where it should be going. And I do commend you for all of the work that you've done. But is it fair that this proposal takes point over everything else that was done and avoids all of the vetting that this committee was formed to do?
Well, if it was a portion of the police task force, the police reform task force, it would have been. I didn't write the CCRB for the police task force. I wrote the CCRB for the
NAACP.
That has been trying to write a CCRB for the last 5 years. So did I want to share my work before it was really done with everyone? Yes and no, because it wasn't really completed. But would I have liked to have shared it with all of you before we came here? Definitely. But it's not my call. This is the property of the NAACP. This is not Derek's. And although I saw some of the recommendations,
point, we have to go back to the focus again, which Derek and Valerie said. This is a template. It was built on the foundation. We don't have a CCRB. We haven't had one. It's 2021. They're starting one. It's not over. There still needs to be work to be done. And more obviously from the meeting tonight illustrates again that more voices need to be heard. I think, wait 1 second before you're finished, I think that maybe territorial, it just seems that that's where it's gotten now, where it's like somebody's upset because they have not been able to get in time. But It's not closed and it's not done for discussion.
Right, and I agree with you. The bottom line is we wanted a template, we already had a template that the accountability and transparency committee put forward. And we were then in the direction of Mr. Andy Stewart, the city manager, found at a certain point, because we could only go so far, because we would need other approvals to continue. The template is there. Also, I would have to agree with Vanessa wholeheartedly. The New York City, the Citizens Review Board is in the position of transformation. And one of the things that they proposed, one of the most important things that they proposed, that the CCRB be made up of civilian members only. Yeah. Well.
And they've been in existence since 1950. And only until 3 years ago did they get an entire civilian board. Since 1950.
So, but we can start now. How many years they trying to do it doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying to do?
And their CCRB is overlooking the biggest and best, Chief, police department on the planet.
So why should we be following after that? If you're in that big, why should we use some of their suggestions as opposed to using ours?
Because you have to call before you.
No, we don't. Because we're starting this from the inception.
Okay.
So the inception, you can put that in.
Fine.
I believe I have it. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you introduce yourself? Sure, I'm Jake Upwoods. I've lived in Peekskill for 37 years. If there's two clans, then ideally people should look at two clans and see where they mesh and where they don't mesh. I've been a clinical psychologist. I've sat on professional review boards. Part of a professional review board is the fact that professionals have certain skill sets, certain training, certain abilities that they acquire. I would not be able to judge a paper on Newtonian physics because I don't know squat about Newtonian physics. How police work is done and how it's supposed to be done is something police officers hopefully are trained to do. Their opinion on what is correct and incorrect is an important point. It may not be the final point, but it is an important point. I could not imagine as a professional being reviewed by someone other than professionals. I would consider opinions from people who weren't psychologists, but in the end, if somebody said what you did as a psychologist was good or not good, I would want that opinion to be from people who train similar to me. Otherwise, I would put very little faith into the outcome I would get from that. Okay. Police police officers may be needed on the board, not to control the board, but to simply be able to say that someone heard me. Someone who had the same skill set as me made an evaluation on what I did in a certain situation. That's important.
I agree.
But more,
one thing I also, I'm going to cut like that is that I don't understand why a police reform task force, that they have the NAACP kind of creating policy for a task force that maybe this is more of a collaboration.
yeah, I totally agree. The other thing is, however this starts isn't how it ends. You know, Derek made a point. New York City started in 1950. They got to where they are now. You know, we're going to start someplace. And if that someplace doesn't work, then you start someplace else. You know, I understand that people, if I sat on that commission, my feelings would be hurt right now. There's a lot of time and effort went in. The people who gathered a lot of information, who made a point of trying to hear everyone's point of view. And then a group of people isolated by themselves came up with their own plan. And I could see where that would create a great deal of tension and contention. I think the most important thing is let's look at the two plans. Let's see where they fit together. I know, are they diametrically opposed? And if they are, then people will have to decide.
They're not diametrically opposed.
But as someone who was a professional, I would not take any credence in a board that was designed to review my abilities if it didn't have members who were trained like me. If there wasn't an expert to say, you know what, I've been trained by you, I've been trained like you, I've been in that situation, here's what I would do. If I didn't have that, then I would take the feedback from that board not so seriously.
I was going to say, one of the things I think that we have to understand is that we're talking about the CCRB, which is a Citizens Review Board. The police has their own internal review board. So they are doing their own reviews, which is separate than the review board that would be conducted by the citizens. The Citizens Review Board is working in conjunction with the citizens. And as far as presenting, we're only going to be looking at special cases. We're not reviewing everything that comes before the police department. We're only reviewing certain things because the police have their own internal with specialists. This is something that this is still the citizens of the town or area that's policing. I also the other point as far as the idea, I have even offered I would be willing to debate the NAACP with their proposal against our proposal anytime, any place where the city manager is there, so the people of Peace still can see. And ours is not even finished. And let the people weigh in on that. That's how.
Can I ask you a question? Are you willing though to collaborate? Or are you only looking at what you propose solely?
Well, listen, the thing about it, I would be willing to collaborate, but it only depends how you define collaborate.
Collaboration is looking at two proposals side by side and a group of people working together to a common goal.
Of course. As I said, I'd be willing to debate that.
Yeah, and see, that's where I have the issue. We're trying to get this CCRB board up for the people of Peekskill and the Peekskill Police Department so that we can live together in harmony. And this is a proactive thing. It's not about debating and I'm not trying to fight with you. We have a program. We have a complete project. Now, what I've seen from the Transparency Committee is a bunch of recommendations. There's no start, there's no middle, there's no ending. It's not complete. And we looked at that and saw that it wasn't complete before we actually launched this. We weren't doing this to oppose them or to fight with them. We're trying to do the best thing we can for the people that live here.
Knowing that it wasn't finished yet, but let's be
And it's still not finished.
I need to call Steve, so they've been putting his hand up for half an hour. It's
No,
your turn.
I'm also a teacher, so.
Can someone also turn the camera?
So I'm Steve Boyce, I'm where does it go next? Does it go to the council, or does it go, so this version of it, how does it then get revised and then goes to council? Who does the revision of it? Who can have input for the revision? If this is an NAACP document, then I'm a member of the NAACP. I think most people in this room probably are members of the NAACP. Granted, I haven't been to a meeting, but are they going to hold a meeting to revise this document? That's my question based on the document, and I have a question based on the commissioner role that I'm a little confused by. Do you want to answer that one?
Okay, as far as,
The first question regarding where does this draft go from here? I don't know the answer to that.
do I?
So just to clarify the overall argument to City Council, we say, there will be no new law in the City of Peekskill that a City Council vote, subject to a public hearing where everybody comes in and they invite the City Council for against. So that's sort of the end of the arc. This conversation got started in the task force, a lot of information was exchanged, and NAACP did a lot of work. So here we are today in a forum called HRC, which is precisely been delegated the responsibility to create this kind of conversation, which is a great success, really, because people are talking in the field. So here we are. How do we get to the point where we provide kind of a votable product for the City Council? Is basically the question we have in this group. How do we get there? There's going to be, the City Council ultimately is elected and empowered to adopt whatever form of CCRB they want, but they're asking for the advice and the input. This group needs to provide the best product.
Does the HRC need to, and panel is not the word that I'm looking for, to create the space for collaboration on the proposal?
That's what we're doing right now.
I mean, like, the next step?
We're not finished.
No.
But let's not be fooled, though. I mean, I feel, I could be wrong, but the CCRB is being created primarily because of use of force issues in the police department. So when you said that the police department they're just gonna be responsible for disciplinary guys not having a proper uniform on, that's not gonna be the case. They're still gonna be involved to have to discipline the officers, because that's what, unless you take the authority away from the chief to maintain the supervisory officers or the investigating agency, it's still gonna have to work together, because you're not just saying that this is if that was an issue, then this wouldn't have to happen.
It doesn't take a power with the chief.
No, I was just leaving,
I'm sorry, you had a second.
Yeah, I was sorry. I wanted to continue what I was asking. So about the commissioner role, so I was a little confused when that was presented to us. So there's going to be a civilian commissioner that has a background in law enforcement. Is that what you said?
No, a civilian investigator.
Civilian investigator. And then there's going to be the commissioner, there's going to be the city manager. The city manager already.
He already is.
So he's already, can I say this also? Okay. So the investigator that will be hired will be employed by the city and will be an investigator for CCRB, or will be an investigator for, so any complaint that comes before the CCRB, be an investigator that will work in tandem with the police department, basically,
right,
and a commissioner. And then their findings will then go to the commissioner.
Their findings will go to CCRB.
Okay, so the CCRB will make the decision based on the investigation.
Well, CCRB and the police department in conjunction will make that determination. CCRB gets a vote, right? It's 7 members, and they get to vote on whether or not this officer is guilty of doing something wrong. Okay, if whatever vote that they have, they bring that back to the city. They bring that back to the commissioner. If the police department doesn't necessarily agree with that, there's going to be a discussion in front of the commissioner. So he's going to have the ultimate power of it, but the civilians will have a say on what's happening and what they believe. The officer, whether he's right or wrong, substantiated or unsubstantiated.
And then I guess just my last part, I know that we don't have time, but sorry, is, and I had my hand up for a while, so, then whatever the CCRB does have a vote to recommend, will that then be implemented by the police department if they're saying that they recommend a disciplinary action take place, but it's just a recommendation, correct?
Right.
So it's not something that automatically this person is going to be disciplined, it's a recommendation, and then is there then action, then the action has to be taken by the police department.
The police chief and the commissioner will sit down and make that determination, what's going to be a punishment and what the penalty is going to be.
It's like an official voice that's
Right.
not been had.
Right.
Kathy.
Susan, I just want to go back.
Kathy had her hand up.
Okay.
You couldn't see
Yeah.
that.
One thing I'm hearing just in terms of moving this along and trying to come to some resolution, because I believe that everybody has got an intention, I'll start there. But at some point, the NACP, if you said something about ownership, and I'm thinking about authorship, there's authorship here, there's authorship there. But if at some point, I think the next step has got to be, if there was something that was presented to Andy, a document of some sort, that the authorship has to be let go, and that has to be melded into
Exactly.
CCRB,
Exactly.
so that then people can feel free to work on it along with maybe just me and whoever else gets a chance to weigh in on all of that before it gets crafted.
I wrote this document. This belongs to Peekskill.
Okay.
It's for Peekskill people.
Okay.
It's for Peekskill. No, whatever they choose to do with it, that's their choice. I don't know what steps are taken next, but it's their choice. It's out here. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. That really is the next step, is to take all the information and really push through it. But there's probably a lot that tends to be the same, or a certain amount that tends to be the same.
No.
Not at all. Okay.
Really, no. They're going in two different directions. No.
Really?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
I want to try to get back to process because there are so many things that are being discussed. Some of it is the piece itself and the validity of the piece and how it works. And questions will be asked about whether it should be police only or citizens only. And to me, you have two proposals, at least one committee that's charged with the proposal and the NAACP committee. And it's obvious that it's very tough to bring them together to present one piece in government. So what I want to know is what will the process be, Susan? How do we move forward on this? And echoing what Kathy said, is there a way, first of all, are we still committees, or I have individual ideas that might differ even from Joseph, although I'm on his team, and I want to bring those forward. We have proposals that have not even been evaluated, like Nicole. We have a process that was put forth by the NAACP that certainly merits inspection, revision, suggestions, and weighed out. Who's going to do that, and what is the timetable, and what is the fiscal process for getting that done? And to the gentleman who has the NAACP shirt off, I agree so much with him, because most of what I've learned has been in conversations with the chief, with Derek, and other people who are professionals in this, and it really comes back to how they go forward with these suggestions, how they tie in and become enthusiastic and carry them out. And if that's not accomplished, then all it will be is another paper CCRB that goes nowhere. So please tell me how this is going to work with it now that there were 22 people, and now there are 4 here. To a couple more on the committee itself, from some minor or other committees. And how do we get this done?
I don't know the answer to that yet. We're going to have to talk with Andy and with Chief, and because we are the monitoring body. We are not the take everything you do and turn it into something body. We're not legislative. Right. Thank you for that. We are advisory. And so that's, we actually, I was on the police reform task force as well. We never really talked about how we would continue the police reform task force work, if we would, after April 1st. Perhaps that is part of the next conversation.
So, are you giving us a position on the county and county committee permission to continue working and developing our proposals? We were halted, but you instructed us to proceed just now. All we hear is that our living on state office, when a lot of that has to do with you letting us know that we weren't going to be completed and that we would possibly resolve that.
I think that he may be misunderstanding what I said.
Can you speak up and into the phone? Valerie can't hear us. She's on now. She can't hear you.
And I don't want to try to go back. I mean, what we know is that what I said before, for a new law to come to be, the legislative body of the city has to approve it. And that's the end point of creating a new law. How we get there is kind of a messy process of sausage making, where different people propose ideas and critique them and so on. The buck stops at the city council, essentially. So partly, I think we need to take guidance from that group. We've got two people here tonight who are on the city council. We'll all work hard for them to give them a product that is serviceable. And I'm committed to that process. I'll sit here just like we did before and participate in those conversations. I don't think there's an easy answer to Jay's question. People need to talk with each other. This is a forum. The council delegated the continuation of these conversations so we'd have some forum, which is AHRC. There's no prohibition, Joe, against you convening your group and working on something as Americans do. You know, small groups is what it takes to get anything done in this world. And that's a good thing. I would support that process, participate in that process. And ultimately, nobody has unless the city council tells us this is exactly how we want to see this happen. All we know is that we want to get a CCRB that they'll vote on kind of together,
Well, I'd like to make a comment about that.
Sorry.
This is a proposal for the Human Relations Commission. I don't know what my fellow members think of it, but maybe what we can do is include the folks that are interested here and ourselves, some of us here, create a subcommittee that is focused only on the CCRB to take all this information and evaluate it and create a collaboration. Would that be something that might be workable?
I think that's within our scope of work.
Because
Could become part of
for me, I'm getting a lot of information. I'm not saying anyone's valid or invalid. It's just all hitting me right now. And I'd like also to say, just as a small footnote, if things are working in Peekskill, let's build on that, okay? So getting a CCRB may be important, and I agree there should be one in every city, every town, but let's also not ignore what's working and emphasize making that happen. So I propose that we create a task force or a subcommittee to focus on the CCRB and give advice to the city council about what we think would work.
All right. I thank you. Duly noted. And I think that's a very good idea. And our fellow Tammy, please make our seat.
I just want to say that as a factor within this joining, I don't think that the HRC members should contribute any solution ideas to the actual solution. Again, we're here to gather, to try and help, to provide information. advise perhaps, but decision making is not going to be part of our responsibility in that.
Does HRC see itself as making a recommendation to the city council ultimately as to what kind of CCRB you think makes sense?
I'm not certain that that's part of what council has asked us.
That's why I'm just asking, because that might help answer Jay's question, is whether HRC itself is solely a kind of a forum, or as a group would want to say to the city council, hey, we think.
Say that the result that came out of the meeting by the joint partners, and I'm going to call you partners, okay, that they present those terms and those conditions to the city council as their agreement.
Vanessa.
So I'd like to make a proposal for like the immediate next steps. I think we only touched on like a certain segment of the different pieces of CCRB. We didn't even talk about the teeth that are contained in the two, which is a whole nother conversation. So I think for the sake of us digesting this information in a way that is going to be effective and efficient, I think we need a document that breaks down the differences like A, B, and C between option 1 and option 2. Once we have that document and we have everything side by side, then we can have a discussion about the merits of one that will work better than the other. And I think at that point, we should bring in the experts, folks that are supporting Derek's side as well as folks that are supporting the other side, and have that discussion. And at that point, I think we can all make an educated decision on how to move forward. But without that information, we're just going to keep going in circles.
Who makes the decision? If that's done, that's a sensible way of looking at it. Who makes the decision that is most nervous for the city? Is it the council?
The city council, ultimately, yeah.
I think I still can't know. This is has to do, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it.
Can't hear.
And again, I don't see it as one side versus the other side.
As that, oh gosh, I don't see it as one side versus the other side. I see it as right now, this is the first meeting. We just saw the draft. No one has read the draft yet. We all need to read the draft. We need to go back to the recommendations again, because I don't remember everything in the transparency recommendations and accountability. We'd have to read that again too. And I think that once that we digest that, then yes, we should be able to do that. But to say it's again, this is why we don't have a CCRB, because this has probably happened before, where it's a lot of different minds. I know you're shaking your head no, but I want you hopefully to open up your mind and to look at it. It's not a versus sort of thing. We need to look at. Okay, I'm sorry for judging you, but your head is going up and it's saying no when I'm trying to speak. So, and even if that is the case, that's okay too. But I just think that we have a lot of information that we need to digest first.
So why don't we circulate the draft instead of we have to follow?
Right.
Can we do more than just a draft and actually have a comparison side by side? If the draft itself is a lot for people to go through. So having like the different big pieces for each CCRB board. Yes, exactly. And actually.
You guys gotta move that phone around.
Makes sense.
I'm not cameraman.
Valerie, what did you say?
You guys have got to use that phone. I'm sorry. I'm doing 2 meetings at the same time and I can't hear what you guys are saying unless you have that phone next to you.
Would you be willing to take your draft and break it out into bullet points, salient points?
I think we started doing that actually. We're pretty much done with actually a comparison. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And she was a document that would be given to the city council, that would be given to the HRC board, that would be given to anyone involved in having the discussion. So we have just like factual information about what the differences are. And I think that's something that we can help the city.
That's a good idea.
Right.
And if we're going to compare both sides of the draft, one draft against another, I think you guys need to write it right. I think you write a draft and just compare the two.
Right.
Because right now, all I've seen really are a bunch of points. A bunch of ideas.
Right now, a bunch of points.
No, but we have a complete.
I know.
So break it down to bullet points, and we'll put your bullet points into all bullet points so people can look at the time. That's all.
There should still be a draft.
It needs to be a draft.
But you also said that you didn't realize that this draft was being put together, so now that there is. I'm not trying to split hairs.
We were told by the city manager that we would possibly be able to continue after April. We're waiting to hear from them.
I heard the same thing, I heard the exact same thing you heard. All I'm saying is that usually when you compare one document to another, you have another document. That's all.
But right now, we're just looking at the bullet points. So we have
Okay,
bullet points.
I'm going to be first to say, I'm not rewriting my draft. It took me long enough to do this.
Was done.
They need to write it.
Was done, but that has been completed and done. So to go forward, the only sensible way is to look at the two proposals, your proposal and whatever our committee comes up with, and judge what is fair, what the committee feels is fair.
Yes.
Because to keep arguing what was done, it's not going to reverse itself.
Right.
We have two proposals, we should look at the merits of both and judge, because I agree in one sense with Derek, we've got to get this damn thing done.
Exactly.
I looked at the police report from years ago, from past chief. We have a commission formed. We had the number of people that should be on it, where it was to be drawn from, and as far as I know, it was never active. And that's the case with a lot of these towns, and I don't want to see that happen in Peekskill.
Right. Good point.
Here.
Yeah, I just want to give a little perspective, because I think one thing throughout this conversation and throughout people's mindset for the past year is everyone has a predetermined notion of what the CCRB is doing and how much work they're going to be doing and how they're going to be basically, dealing with so many complaints, so many issues, and I think people just don't know. So the Peekskill Police Department averages 5 complaints a year, of which most of them are, I got a ticket and I don't deserve to get a ticket. The officer wasn't compassionate enough to me on the call. And the reality is that, and we have body cameras, and the reality is that within 5 minutes, almost every complaint that this city gets and this department gets is debunked within 5 minutes or found to be substantiated. There is not nearly as much gray area as you might think that involves a lot of debate, a lot of back and forth. The reality is that in most complaints we get, there is a very clear-cut answer in a very short period of time. As I said, in 4 years, we've had 21 complaints. That's, if you're having 48 meetings over those four years, that's more than half of them. There's no complaints, and obviously less if you got 2 in 1 month or 3 in 1 month, just based on the law of averages. Whenever I want to buy something, I type in what's the best so-and-so. I need a new lawnmower, I type in what's the best lawnmower, because I want the best lawnmower, or I want the best this, or I want the best that. However, I don't need the best iPhone and the most expensive iPhone if all I do is play solitaire, answer my phone, and read emails, okay? I don't need every bell and whistle that is available. I need to make sure what needs to be done gets done. We can have this discussion for months, for years, whatever. If we're going to do something, we should do something that gets the job done. That's all I'm going to say. If you think there's a problem here, Peekskill, and we have one serious case in Peekskill that did happen it's going on almost 2 years now, or a year and a half. And just so everyone knows, that would never go to a CCRB. That's not what a CCRB handles, that complaint, okay? That's a criminal complaint that's being handled by the district attorney's office. The majority of complaints that CCRB handles in reality are the officer was rude to me. The officer, didn't answer my question. The officer gave me a ticket when I didn't deserve a ticket. And they basically just want to plead their case to a CCRB. And we're constantly telling people, plead it, tell the traffic court judge, tell Judge Johnson or Judge Fernandez, okay? That's not to be discussed at a CCRB, Okay.
If I could just say, you're providing more information. And again, I'm bringing all this in and trying to process it. And I guess not to counter everything you just said, because I'm not in your shoes. I've never worked a day as a police officer. But if you take, like, for example, cars, right? Every car has a spare tire. I believe every town and city should have CCRB. That's my opinion. Whether you use it or not is hopefully you'll never have to use it. But if someone has a complaint that rises, like the criminal complaint that is now being handled by the TA, could also be reviewed by the CCRB as well as the TA. That can happen if it's legislated, right? Now, again, I have to go back to, and I don't want to hog up any more time or keep speaking, but essentially, if things are working, let's expand on what works. And I do believe there should be a CCRB, but I also believe Peekskill works. People are really doing things right here. That's why I live here. But, and so we have to build on the good work that people are doing, and public safety as a definition and how we define it, how we look at it, uniform and non-uniform. But it's just, I'm getting input. That's basically what I'm feeling right now in terms of gathering information.
And I'm glad both of you said that, because when you guys get to the point where you're going to write your actual draft, I'm just hoping that you know exactly what the responsibilities of a CCRB is. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying, I hope you know. I read your recommendations, and I saw where you kind of commingled IAB investigations with CCRB. They're apples and oranges. They're entirely two separate things. And that's when I started shaking my head when you gave an example of the case in Peekskill. It could be handled by a CCRB. No, it can't.
Well, if the legislature, 2 members who are here, our lawmakers decide it does, then it does.
No, but you have a Westchester County DA's office that handles criminal investigations. That's what that is. Okay. So I'm just trying to explain to Joe that there are 2 separate entities.
Okay.
And when you get ready to write your draft, just know CCRB handles certain things and IAB handles something else.
Right. I think we need to here. I think looking final things up, but you're specifically talking about citizens review board, and I think what we were addressing more so was the citizens oversight board. See, there's a difference between a review board and an oversight board, and that's where I think a lot of our differences come in. And it took me a little while to understand it, but now I understand it. The review board doesn't really have too much speed. They just look at what's going on and so on and so forth. Where the oversight board looks at what's going on and has to keep the vehicle, make some type of recommendation. That's what we get to. And I think now I'm getting a better understanding. So I think it was good to have this type of conversation, but I think our plans are entirely different. You're talking about a review board, we're talking about oversight. 2 entirely different things.
That's what CCRB stands for. Civilian Complaint Review Board.
I just.
Why are we using the same words? Let's talk about
No.
It's been here 2 hours.
Yeah, right. But in our recommendations, we don't use the word review. We keep talking about comparing the 2, but in our recommendations, we do not use the word review. Thank you very much. So if people pay attention to what our review.
This discussion is always about CCRB only. If you want to have an oversight, that's another discussion.
But we're talking about what's going to be voted on by the city. And what our proposal is as opposed with a proposal.
No.
So
Okay.
He
gets it.
We're not going to have both of them. So I'm still going to be. They have to be prepared. They have to be prepared.
Valerie. I just have a question. So I'm sorry I missed a chunk of the meeting. I did hear, though, one good thing is that we would all work together to make this work. Now I'm hearing a difference in what it is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And now I'm hearing a difference in what we're proposing, CCRB, Oversight Board. I think we need to be focused on this one area. We propose a CCRB
That's what the Peekskill NAACP proposed. Before I left, we had already said, everyone in this room, everyone who wants to look at this draft that we proposed is more than welcome to look at that draft. What I also heard was that what was proposed by the Transparency and Accountability Committee of the Police Reform Task Force, there would be a comparison, right? We have started to do that because we do understand that there are some trepidations or whatever you want to call it in accepting something that you have not seen. And I will say this again, what we have submitted is different from what was submitted to the task force because it was not necessarily a plan. We laid out a plan. So I'm not going to get back into apples and oranges and what we submitted. I think that we need to go with everybody looking at what the differences are to what was submitted. Let's start there. We cannot solve the world's problems in this one meeting. It is almost 8:30, and I was actually surprised that the meeting was still going on. And I don't have a problem with it. All I'm saying is right now I'm doing double duty. I'm doing 2 meetings. But can we start there? Can we start there? And I don't know how that gets organized. I don't know, Susie, Andy, maybe you can say, okay, listen, we submit this by this date. Everybody looks at it. We do have a comparison document. We'll look at it again. We'll dust it off and we'll see, and we'll send that out as well. Maybe that'll kind of reduce some of the steps that people have to take. This is not a debate. This is not an argument. This is not well, ours is better and yours is, this is not about that. And I want to make that very clear. It has nothing to do with that. Okay. So I think we need to just take the feelings out of this and just make sure that we have something that is for Peekskill as a whole, not for the Peekskill NAACP, for the entire Peekskill city. You ain't gonna please all the people all the time. But as Derek said, we got the bare bones, we have the foundation set. And I think it's a foundation that is set so well that it could be implemented in the near term and not wait another 5 years because we have to get a contract signed, we gotta get money for this and money. We have something that we can implement like next week, literally, okay? So let's look at that, let's look at the feasibility, let's look at whether or not it can be done. If there's any objection to something so much so that we are not gonna implement a CCRB at all, that needs to be brought out. And I think that that's a very important point. Do you want nothing at all, or you want to fight so hard on one piece, one little piece, that we won't have a CCRB until it gets hashed out? And I think we need to think about that very strongly and take our emotion out of this and see what's best for Peekskill. And that's really all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Madam. I think that I understand what we want is we want to see a consolidated proposal by Joseph Teal, and you want to see it compare and contrast and matrix from the other two. I will work on that, using those and how, as soon as I have documents. Okay, and then once we have that, we'll send a meeting for follow up. Right.
And what members of Police Force disagree on the approach? Is there individual recommendations being considered, or does it have to come uniformly from that committee?
You need to come to the meeting and express yourself.
You understand the question?
The question is.
Well, it's not just that I disagree, for example, on what to name this in the recommendation, or how many people might be on, or whether it should be oversight or review. Are individuals, can they come forth? I mean, or must they come forth just from that committee?
We're going to have a public meeting, and anybody can come to it and speak out of it here. I think that answers your question, Jay. Or if we're having a public meeting, it's going to have documents.
I can't hear anything.
Public input on that.
Valerie can't hear.
All right, can I ask one last question? So do I have it right when I say that in order to compare the 2 documents and see what's in them, that they have to actually write a document first?
I agree with you.
Right, you have to write a document, you have to put together a full package in order to compare it to what we have. Because we have a full package, where you have recommendations right now. So if you write your full package, put them side by side and see which one makes more sense for these skills, you know? And if we blend them, we blend them. I mean, this is not a fight, we're trying to get this stuff and go to peace skills. This is not about a fight. You know?
So let's do that.
Just a big question. I would agree that like any level of public comment and collaboration, if community members from other members of the NAACP, other members of the public want to contribute to the ideas that are being compiled, I would say that feel free to reach out to Joe Teal as the chair of that committee. Maybe Andy. I mean, I don't know if HRC is the keeper of comments for. If that's the case, send them along to the email. I'm assuming there's an peekskillhrc@gmail.com. So peekskillhrc@gmail.com. If folks have ideas as to what the CCRB or the CCOB need to be, then please send them along. But also feel free to collaborate with the people here if they're open to collaborate. And I do want to say that I think that there's I understand that we have on one hand we have an option where the policy is already written, but that policy is very much to my understanding kind of just like a copy and paste of what Austining set in place. And I think that
you're wrong.
No. You got to stop saying that we have rewritten Austining. We have not copied their code.
It's
so far over time, it's not even funny. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your impassioned comments. Appreciate it. And
sorry about that. Thank you all for thank you all for coming. Thank you for your impassioned comments and your involvement in this. We will figure out how the process is for this collaboration comes together, and we will figure out how to publicize that best. And hopefully in future meetings, we will not have Zoom issues. I think now, according to New York State, our meetings have to be in person entirely.
Have to be in person. If we're allowed, as we have tonight, to have remote participants.
We got to figure out a better way to deal with the sound. We better. Yeah. Pardon me?
Bring a cable.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't bring my power supply, but it never occurred to me that it would go this long. Yes. So thank you all again. Once again, there's pie. Please eat it. All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.